Greetings from somewhat overcast, but at least not raining Vancouver. I hope you are all well out there in Calgary. This is Homomorphic Encryption. You can feel perfectly free to take a picture of that QR code and get information about me with absolutely no risk at all, as long as you remember that I started my security life researching malware, and therefore I know every possible way to get somebody tricked into installing malware on their computers. Anyways, this is homomorphic encryption, which is not just weak forms of encryption like ROT13 here. It is, in fact, the ability to encrypt your data and still be able to use it for something without decrypting it. You don't have to do any decryption to use homomorphic encryption. And so that's an interesting way, and a lot of people have been very interested in it, possibly more interested than it really promises that it will deliver here. So the CSE, there are spies, or electronic intelligence spies, anyways. They said that they were working on homomorphic encryption. They called it the holy grail of encryption. So you can see that some people are a little bit over enthusiastic about it, maybe, particularly given that this is not new. This we have been using this for a while, and as one proof, what do we do to store passwords? We hash them. Do we ever unhash them? No, you can't unhash anything. So password hashing is a form of homomorphic encryption. We encrypt the password, we hash it. It's no longer there in the clear text, but then we never do decrypt it. What we do is when somebody submits a password, we hash it again. And if the hashes match, then we're okay. That is the correct password, or at least close enough for government work, system work. So some other examples, and unfortunately, in order to illustrate this, these examples aren't particularly good. So these, there's exact search. The electronic codebook mode of block cipher, which is the weakest form of ciphering. As you can see here, we got the original image. We encrypt it using electronic codebook mode, and we can still see, get at least a rough idea of what the image actually is. So that's that is the weakest form of a block cipher, the weakest mode, anyways, of a block cipher. And we can do an exact search in the same way we did with the password hashing. We can, as long as our block length matches our record length, we can do exact searches with that. It's, again, we some restrictions on it. The block size has to match the record size. We can do, as well as the searching, some forms of sorting. For example, if we take a Caesar cipher, good old ROT13 example, or other ciphers that use mod functions, we can very often get a sorting capability out of those, as long as we're not doing too much beyond the mod functions. COVID-19 contact tracing, and while everybody else has been busy, the whole population has been unbusy during the pandemic, and we, of course, being the techies, we have been busy, and particularly putting on our events online and helping everybody else put on their events online and that sort of thing. and all that sort of thing. I wrote a book on cybersecurity lessons from COVID-19. So I've looked into a fair amount of this stuff. But COVID-19 contact tracing uses random data as a beacon. And the beacon does not contain any personally identifiable information. So again, that isn't really encrypting the data. That is just using completely random data, but it is useful for that purpose without betraying any personal information. So, and then there's our vaccine passports, and of course you can use this. Take a picture of it, use it to get into bars, restaurants, sporting events, gyms, and that sort of thing. And so now again, this isn't really encryption. This is encoding, of course, and it's encoded into the QR code. It's encoded behind the QR code in various other ways and formats. And actually, all the vaccine passports pretty much across the country, although they varied in the way they've implemented it, the base format is in fact all the same. And so the government coming up with a new vaccine passport across the country, that shouldn't be too difficult, because basically all they have to do, all that's in there is, there is your vaccine record, and it's in a specific format, but it's a format used worldwide. And so that information can get in there, and all that the verification apps do is take your name out of the record, take the fact that you have been vaccinated out of the record, verify the digital signature of the provincial health authority, and that's it. So all they have to do, we've got each province has their own right now, and to get a national one, all we really need to do is add all the signatures for all the provinces, and then it works. So, but again, this is not really encryption. So a better example, though, is the reversed 3-ballot voting system. Of course, we've had elections recently. We had a provincial election last year. The Americans have just had a really disastrous election. We had a federal election and all that. So, everybody's talking about ballots and that sort of thing. One of the things down in the States, somebody is pushing the idea of using blockchain for voting and that sort of thing, which is a really terrible idea. But the 3-ballot voting system is a really, really interesting one. We have private ballots, and right now they're anonymous, but that's all we've got. The 3-ballot voting system uses homomorphic encryption, and it delivers not just anonymity, but non-repudiation of voting. It's verifiable to the voter that their vote has been counted. The ballots can be counted without being decrypted, and it can be implemented either on paper or digitally. So it's a really, really interesting system. And if you are interested in this, I would look at the 3-ballot voting system. And whether you're interested in homomorphic encryption or in electronic voting, interesting on both counts. Okay, to get into a more recent example of homomorphic encryption. There are systems of homomorphic encryption which will allow you to do addition and multiplication without doing the decryption on the original data. So there, 3 times 4 plus 5 equals 3 times 4 plus 3 times 5. That is the associative and commutative laws of addition and multiplication. And so any function that fits that format might be the basis for a solution. So any function you can find there could be something that you can use for homomorphic encryption that will allow you addition and multiplication. And IBM has worked on this, and they have a system, BGV, that is addition and multiplication. Microsoft has SEAL, again, addition and multiplication. Google has done something a little bit different, comparison and limited addition with private join and compute. So now Don't worry about the URLs. I pumped all of that into the chat, so you can pick it up there. You don't have to screenshot the slides, although if you want to screenshot the slides, that's perfectly okay with me. And homomorphicencryption.org is someplace you can go for more data on this. And the introduction has even more examples of different places you can go, and you can actually, download and play with the code and work with this stuff and see how it actually does work. Okay, just a little break here because this is somewhat technical, but seeing as how we got slow start here, we'll just continue on. Now, what homomorphic encryption isn't is just as important as what it is. It's not a thing. There's various functions and implementations, all the same, blockchain here. It's not universal. You have to choose your function in order to choose the particular work that you are doing with homomorphic encryption. So, you don't encrypt it with homomorphic encryption and then decrypt it, or work with it in various ways. No, you have to choose what you're going to use it for, and that drives how you are going to encrypt the data in the first place. So, taking a bit of a side issue to cryptography itself here, there's symmetric versus asymmetric. And of course, symmetry is very strong, but it has a problem with key management. Asymmetric is not as strong, but is great when it comes to key management. So what we have done in crypto is we have the hybrid system, where we use the asymmetric encryption for key management only, and the bulk data encryption is being done with symmetric encryption. You cannot do that with homomorphic encryption. You are working directly with the encrypted data, and again, what you're using the encrypted data for is drives how you encrypt the data in the first place. And this is going to be heavily mathematical, and therefore it's going to use lots and lots of processing time on computers if we are going to use this stuff. So this is not, the holy grail of encryption. This is not going to solve a ton of problems. It's going to create some others. It'll solve some problems, but you have to recognize what the weaknesses are. The algorithms are limited. The functions that we can use are limited. And if you want a new function to use with homomorphic encryption, you're going to have to find an appropriate algorithm. If we are combining functions, the algorithms get even more limited. We're, going to be restricted. And again, as the restrictions grow on the algorithms because of the functions that you want, that may weaken the strength of the algorithms. And again, recall the bad examples that Caesar ciphers is the weakest in terms of address space. Block mode, ECB mode is the weakest mode for block ciphers. So obviously have to change the wording of that slide. So which, good old CISSP question time. Which of the following is not an effective deterrent against a database inference attack? Is it partitioning, small query sets, noise and perturbation, cell suppression? Well, the answer is usually hard for people to figure out here. Because, you get down to noise and perturbation and people think, oh, you don't want noise and perturbation in there. Actually, that's a very good, effective deterrent against database inference attacks. So people really don't understand the weaknesses in the system. And the accuracy of what we get out of homomorphic encryption is another concern here. A number of the proposed homomorphic encryption algorithms do provide for the functions, but not necessarily with absolute accuracy. And so there has been some work done with what is known as fully homomorphic encryption. So again, when you determine what it is that you want to use the homomorphic encryption for, you are going to have to decide, do you want just, roughly homomorphic encryption or fully homomorphic encryption? So, lots to decide, lots to wonder about. Now, Microsoft says that they are using homomorphic encryption. And again, going back to the 3-ballot voting system, Microsoft has come up with something called Election Guard. And from the way that it is described, it very much sounds as if they are using the 3-ballot voting system and therefore homomorphic encryption. But recently what they came out on was saying that their use of homomorphic encryption was safeguarding passwords in Microsoft Edge. And well, no, it wasn't, or at least, not in any great way, because it's just password hashing again. And besides, Google Chrome has been doing that for years. So again, when somebody uses one of these security buzz phrases and says, this is something that we are bringing out and adding and newly developed and that sort of thing, maybe they're just using the same thing over again and using a different term for it. Any particular questions?
Wondering whether or not with the 3-ballot system, the voter can prove that they voted in a specific manner. And if so, could that be used for vote selling?
Interesting. Okay. That is an interesting question. I am not absolutely certain. I know that with the 3-ballot voting system, the voter can prove that their vote has been counted. I do not. Well, with the 3-ballot voting system, one of the factors is that what you take away from the 3-ballot voting system and keep for yourself is two of the 3 ballots. And so it can be specified that what the voter takes away does not, in fact, prove to somebody else the way that they have voted, because they don't have the complete ballot there. How obfuscated that would be, I'm not absolutely certain, but it is an interesting question. And again, I would say go to the actual details on the 3-ballot voting system and look up the details on that. Are there examples of where homomorphic encryption is being used today? Well, as I said, in password hashing, yes. It's in terms of the other functions, it's only just coming on. It is I can't think of anything specific. Again, I've given you the URLs in terms of where you can go and look at the algorithms. And these are actual working algorithms. It's not just, in a sense, it's research as they're developing the algorithms. But you can actually, use them, dive into them and work with them. In terms of the comment about Nat Blaze and other election experts hating internet voting, I certainly agree with that. And I would go even further. I would say that if you go to the Risks Forum Digest archives and just do a search on voting, and you will find stuff stretching back 30 years and more. All of us have been extremely concerned. And this is one of the reasons that we're concerned now, that people are throwing in things like, saying blockchain is going to fix internet voting or online voting or machine voting. And it's not, it's not the type of appropriate stuff. The 3-ballot voting system, I would say, is it's quite different. It is a new development. And I'm very interested in seeing how people will work with that. And as I say, it can work in both paper and digital systems. And so we are not necessarily just looking at online voting in this case. I think that it does give us new functions and new features in voting, even with our paper ballot systems. So it's a really interesting way to look at it, and it is a very, very good example of the potential use of homomorphic encryption that I think can address a lot of issues that have been a problem for decades without being effectively addressed. Should everyone be using homomorphic encryption? No, not necessarily. There's lots of cases where it just isn't the answer. And in the same way, I've got to get myself a T-shirt that says blockchain is not the answer. In the same way, a lot of people are pushing homomorphic encryption without really understanding what it is and what the limitations are. Homomorphic encryption seems to refer to the framework and not the encryption algorithm used. If I've got this wrong, how is hashing different than homomorphic encryption? Okay, in a sense, you're right. Homomorphic encryption is not a specific algorithm. There are a whole bunch of different algorithms that are, in fact, examples of homomorphic encryption. Homomorphic encryption is not one algorithm. And again, as I say, you go to the different algorithms and look at what they are intended to do, and the function that you want for homomorphic encryption determines what algorithm it is that you use for your particular application. You mentioned that homomorphic encryption isn't universal because you have to pick a function. Could we pick a function that lets us support a universal instruction set, or at least an instruction set that supports algorithms without too much recursion? I very much doubt it. I very much doubt it. As I say, you have to pick a obtain a deep mathematical understanding of the function that you want, and then pick an algorithmic function that will fulfill that specific function that you want in the application. So it's very unlikely, and I would, off the top of my head, I would say impossible to pick a universal instruction set that would support all kinds of homomorphic encryption. And as I say, the more functions that you try to build into an algorithm to use with homomorphic encryption, I strongly suspect that eventually they will find that putting too many functions into it weakens the encryption. Any thoughts on the use of homomorphic encryption to resist the challenges posed by quantum computers? Oh, yes. Lovely question. I would say it's completely orthogonal. You're essentially trying to address two completely different problems. The quantum computers, the issue with regard to quantum computers is with regard to the ability to do sort of multiple attempts at decryption, massive numbers of multiple attempts at decryption, all in one operation because of the way that quantum computers work. What you are doing with homomorphic encryption is using the data without decrypting it. So it's addressing two completely different problems, and they are not really, you know, as we work with the mathematics of one, it may give us insights into the other, but the specific challenges and activities there are basically pointing in two different directions. So no, sorry, it's not really going to address that directly. Any other questions, comments? Okay, well, thank you for listening.